so much for that very kind intro.
Well, you earned it, my friend. You have earned
Great.
it.
Thank you so much. You are very
So,
kind.
so Ina, memoir writing. I want to talk about that today because there is a lot of things that go with something like memoir writing. I had on a previous program we had the great Erwin Zucker, and he told me that if he was ever going to write a memoir, he would refer to it as a memoir. But he said that's not a commercial term, so don't use that. But tell us a little bit about what you do and everything with helping people write memoirs.
Sure thing. And Erwin is just a star. I love him. He's so funny, and he has so much good stuff to say. He's really been a fabulous help to a lot of people.
Yes,
Getting
yes,
the word out about their material, and he does so well. So getting to memoir, a couple of different things. You said what's going on with memoir, so I let me just say before I talk about what I do, if that's okay.
Go ahead, my friend.
Great.
Go ahead.
What I'd like to say is it's been exploding. There is this COVID thing has been so hard on everybody. But one of the things that I think is really important is keeping your spirits up. And how do you do that? Well, writing is really a terrific balm for the soul. And a lot of people have figured that out. And one of the things that's happened, that's one of the things that's contributed to writing memoir. So getting to what I do in this realm is I help people open up. I think one of the first things that happens for a lot of people I've worked with is they are scared that they have nothing to say, B, if they did, they wouldn't know how to write it down anyway, and C, really, who cares? It's always the thing that happens. So I have some techniques that I use to disabuse them of the feelings that nobody cares. That's very important because one of the, I mean, really, everybody has a story, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So I want people to understand that and believe that the reality of that, it's really true. And only you really can tell your own story in your own way. And so one of the things that I also do when I work with people is allow them to have their own voice, and I don't correct for English some of the time when it's important to get the character's story correct. For example, if a writer is writing about a friend or a family member and quoting that person whose grasp of the English language may be less than perfect English, that's not to be corrected because that is authentic. That is how that person speaks. And it adds color to the story. So the thing is for helping people write that way, one of the pieces of advice that I give is listen. Talk to people and then listen. And just get steeped in how they actually talk, and you'll be able to capture that on paper or computer screen or cell phone. These days people are writing on cell phones, especially in Asia.
I tried several years ago to write a concert review on a cell phone. That was the most horrible experience, and I never want to do that again. How are people writing on their phones, Ina?
I'm with you on that. I find I have Word on my phone, and I just can't stand it because you hit one thing and it scrolls to the end. You don't want it to do that. And that's what drives me nuts more than anything else. The people who are doing that are in Asia, where they're just really cell phone I don't want to say addicted, but that's almost the right word. And that's where that whole thing started several years back. And they're writing 60,000-word novels on cell phones. And I'm not telling you they're the world's greatest novels, but some of them do very, very well. So I'm with you, though. I absolutely would not do that. And I have created a book that's kind of a classic now, How to Write Your Memoirs, Fun Prompts to Make Writing and Reading Your Life Stories a Pleasure. We've talked about that one. And I did want to talk about it today because things are happening, and I'm going to be issuing an expanded version in the next few months. And it has more pages, it has more prompts, it has a whole section on COVID, which brings us back to what is going on now with writing. And but to get back to the book for a second before I go there, and your thought about cell phones. In the book, one of the things I did was allow space within the book itself. It's fashioned as a workbook, and it has space to write after prompts, and then it has extra pages at the end too for more writing if you didn't have enough. And people say that helps them because it keeps it. It gives it. The prompts are deliberately written to stimulate people to feel and to think, and the process works in such a way that the very first prompt gets people going, and they find they can't stop, which is really great. But the other prompts help them flesh out different parts of their lives, and that's what they're for.
It is Ina Hillebrandt. She's with us today here on a broadcast. She's an author. She's a speaker. She is a writing coach. Go ahead and pick up where you left off there, my friend. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sure. So we were talking about the process for writing, I think, basically, when I was talking about how things are laid out in this particular book that I wrote and the sequel that's coming. I think what's important is when you're thinking about writing your memoir, again, get as vivid as you can in your recall. And another important thing is not to censure yourself as you write. You don't have to write the great American novel here. In fact, a lot of people are not writing a novel. Some people do what's called a through line or a novelistic style of writing a memoir. And that's fine. But a lot of people haven't thought that way. And what they'd like to do, and it's perfectly okay to do, is write separate pieces that are about separate incidents or people in their lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's also perfectly fair. So it's just really how you think. I have a variety of ideas on how to structure a memoir in this book, and it'll be in the sequel as well. So again, just get rid of that monster that so many of us carry around. I can't, or I'm not good enough, or I don't know how, or who cares. None of that is necessary. Just relax and have a good time.
Ina Hillebrandt with us today. She joins us live here on our big program. Coast to coast, border to border on iHeartRadio. You can watch live video at our website, JiggyJaguar.com. And Ina Hillebrandt is with us today. She's an author, she's a speaker, she's a writing coach. So what is one of the major roadblocks to putting a memoir together, Ina?
To putting it to bed, did you say?
To putting it together from
putting it together.
Bringing this out there. You're the expert. Give us all the details here.
Right. In 4 seconds, I'm going to do this. No, those are very good questions.
You've got as much time as you need. With the background that you have, you can say it. You can take us through the whole thing.
Oh, you're so kind. There are a number of steps. The first step, of course, is getting your thoughts down on paper And don't let anything distract you as you're doing this. I mean, by that I mean there are writers who write in different ways, professional writers. They have a whole different range of what works for them, and there is no one way. I know people who are very Hemingway, and they're writing in the morning before everybody else gets up. When I was a kid, living at home in high school, I remember writing in the middle of the night because nobody was up. What that meant was I would come home from school and take a nap. And I must say my family was very kind to me because I was in the living room when I did this often, not even in my own room. I would just fall asleep. And people would walk very quietly around me, which is very kind. I don't know that every family would do that. But my time when I felt I could really do my homework, and some of that was writing, but it was, other kinds of homework, was in the middle of the night. And again, the criterion for me was that nobody else was up to distract me, so I could really focus and get stuff done. And that worked very well for me. Other people, again, it's the morning. Charles Lamb was a bookkeeper during the day, so he wrote at night too, but not as late as I. I think he did it after dinner, and I don't know how late into the night. So that's one way. Now, I'm kind of talking daily for a while, thinking these ways of writing, but I will tell you it doesn't have to be daily. It can be once a week, on a weekend. But the main point of whenever you carve out for yourself a time to write, do this as a promise to yourself. Do this as a date with yourself. Do not let anyone stop you in the middle and interrupt. As much as once in a while, that can't be helped. If you're a family person, you have a kid who has an accident, you're going to interrupt because that's critical. But for the most part, try very hard to stick with your plan. You make a promise to you. You deserve it. Do it. You'll feel a lot better, and the pages will start to mount up, whether they're in a computer or on paper. Seeing the pages grow is such a reward in itself. I don't know, Jiggy, have you ever written anything in terms of a long form anything?
Well, I've written like columns and things like that. I've thought about writing a book, but it just seems so arduous that I don't think I could pull it off. But
well, that's interesting, and I get it. If you ever decide that you did want to do that, I would suggest being not so hard on yourself and just set aside the time. I'm talking to listeners now, too.
Okay.
This is really, really critical to me in this process. Set aside the time. Don't feel guilty about it. You're not taking anything from anybody else. You are doing something that will make you better, and that will make you better for everyone else. And just fulfill this promise to yourself. And again, there are different ways you can set up the time. As I said before, some people do it on a daily basis. Some people don't feel they have that much time, so they'll do it maybe once a week. But if you do it on a daily basis, stay true to it. Professional writers will use different yardsticks to give themselves a writing time. And some of them do it by the clock. They'll say something like 8 to 12. And that's it. Now, here's the key to this. If you're doing an 8 to 12, stop at 12, even if you're in the middle of a sentence. And, in fact, it's great if you are in the middle of a sentence. And that sounds weird, but it's really terrific for the following reason. When you come back to it the next day, you'll jump right in. Because you'll have something that you can pick up that you can finish, and that'll get you going. So that's one way, is to do it by the clock, a specific time. Another way people measure they've done enough for a day is the number of pages they've created. That's perfectly legitimate, too. Number of words is another way. If you're working on the computer, it's an easy thing to count up the number of words. It's right there in whatever program you're using to write. So that's another way. So again, it's persistence. It's giving yourself permission. And I will say this also. I think we might have touched on this once, but it's a lot of fun. I want to make sure I mention it again. There are lots of times when experienced writers, the most experienced, as well as those starting out, will just get stuck. You know, the writer's block thing? They won't know what the heck to say next. And so don't let that get you. If it's really that you really just can't get past it, fine. Take a walk. Go outside and just take a walk. And be where you are. Don't worry about it. Don't consciously even think about the project at that time. And guess what often happens? Suddenly a light bulb goes off and you've got it. And then you can go back and write again. Use that thought. By the way, when you do this taking a walk thing, be sure you take something to record this on. You and I were just talking about, geez, I can't write on a cell phone. But in this case, for a short note, it could be a cell phone. You know, just to give yourself a few words or a phrase so you won't forget what it is you're thinking. And then you go back. Or paper and pencil, you know, or pen, whatever. So that's important. Again, you know, I think my major theme here is don't beat up on yourself. I think that's what keeps a lot of people from being able to write. So those are some of the main things.
That's awesome.
Now,
that's awesome.
Well, it's, you know, it comes out of my own experience. You know, for me, I'm talking to everybody who might be listening, but I'm also reminding myself when I say these things. It's important. We all get that. We all get to this point where we think, oh gosh, nothing I'm doing is any good. It happens to everybody.
Awesome.
And just stop it. You know, just stop judging. Just put your head down and do it. You know, there's that. Another thing is don't worry. I was talking earlier about don't let anything distract you. That includes your own thoughts. Sometimes we're writing one thing and something pops up that really is not part of what we're writing in the moment. That's okay. Write it down, put it in a separate file if you're on the computer, and then go back to where you were. So that way you've got it. You can pull it out later, and it hasn't distracted you from what you were doing. So that's important too. So this is all process, and then you had asked about what do you do with stuff once it's done. Well, I'll tell you, when you get to the point where you've finished whatever it is you feel you have to say for this particular book, we're talking now about memoir. We're not talking fiction. We're not talking nonfiction in the sense that, you know, how-to something. We're talking about memoir, stories of your life. So, and written not in a linear form, but in separate stories. And they could be chronological. In that sense, they'd be linear, but they're not necessarily connected one to the other. They can be, whatever way you're writing this, whenever you feel you've completed what you have to say for this book of your life, the next step is, what do I do, right? I've got this done. I've got a draft. Now what do I do? Well, you know, the usual thing to do, if you're being advised by anybody who is a coach or writer or editor, is go through it and do a second draft. Go through it, fix stuff. You'll find typos. Fix them. There are some really good plain old programs in Word that work very well, but you need more than that. Your own eye will catch stuff that won't catch. And once you're done with that, and you know, read through, you want to be sure you haven't repeated yourself too often. You want to be sure that you've not only just repeated yourself, but left stuff out that might be important. So finding that out actually takes another pair of eyes than your own. And one thing people do is they send what's called a beta copy to a few friends and have friends look at it. Now, friends are not professionals usually, so this isn't a professional read, but they can provide some useful input too. And you take their input. They sometimes will say, well, gee, I don't know what you mean here, or this doesn't make any sense to me, or gee, I really like this, or I want to know more about this. Those kinds of comments are very useful. If they say this won't sell in the marketplace, just pay no attention, because that's not who they are.
That's right. That's right. You know, it is. Every once in a while, I like to go back and listen to old audio of radio personality Tom Likas, and there will be people that will call into his show, and they're like, "You're just a horrible man. I just wish that you would just get off the radio." And he would always go, "Are you a program director?" And so with this, it's always, "Are you in the book publishing industry?"
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So, which brings us to the best thing you can do for yourself before you think about publishing this, whether you do it as a self-published book or you try to get a traditional publisher. And memoir is being sought after now. So you have a chance, but you have to be pretty darn good to have that happen. How do you know whether you are, and how do you know your manuscript is ready to go anywhere? Well, that's when you should invest in a good editor. And an editor will help you do what's called content editing if you need that, and you often do if you're just starting out, especially if you haven't even written anything and you want to develop it, then you need a content editor to help you as you go. And that's one of the things I do. And the other thing you need is when you're done and you're past that point where you feel you've got all the content in there, then you still need an editor. And you need an editor with whom you can work comfortably. And the way you do that is you interview them. First of all, you go online and you check different places. I've just discovered a wonderful resource called Reedsy, Reedsy. Might be SEY. It's terrible. I should check that just to be sure. I've gone in there. I've got a bookmark, so I forgot whether they have it. But it's .com. So it's easy to find, and they're very, very good. They have a lot of people there who can help, and they'll give you tips on how to find a good editor within their ranks. And then there are other resources out there. You might be part of a local writing group. And I'm offering online writing groups, too. Writing groups are really good for getting your work done. And part of that process that's so helpful with a writing group is that they meet on a regular basis, and you must have material ready. That keeps you on the stick. Having that deadline means, oh, my God, I've got to get something done.
Yes.
But you also get good feedback, and you give good feedback, and that's important on a regular basis. So if you're part of a writing group, that's swell, but you still are going to need, before trying to get it out there to the world, you do need an editor. It just really, professional editing is critical. If there's nothing else you invest in.
Ina, I love everything that you're saying. I need to get you on some Thursday with my friend Richard Kurtz, who has a thing called the La Jolla Writers Conference.
Uh-huh.
And just have you guys bat around the business of writing. Because
that would be fun.
That would be fun.
It would.
I'm going to send you an email as soon as we are done here today, and see what kind of a time on a Thursday in the next month would work, because I think you and Rich could have a bang up of a conversation, as they say.
Sounds terrific.
Well, before we let you go, Ina, how do we find you on social media and the websites and everything else?
Okay. Best way to find me really at this point is the website, and it's thememoircoach.com. That's MEMOIR. Ina, thememoircoach.com. And you'll find other contacts for me there. You'll find a Facebook link and stuff like that. I look forward to hearing from people. It would be swell, and I really always enjoy talking with you. You're just a delight, and it's been fun. It is fun talking with you.
Yes, and that's why I got to thinking. We need to have you on some Thursday with Rich, because I think that would just be fantastic. Because I think he could learn some stuff from you, and I'm not sure if you could learn anything from him, but I know that you would have a fun time either way.
It sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm sure I can. There's something to be learned in every conversation.
Yes.
And it's fun to communicate with people within the group. It really is. The writing group. It's just a great community.